Hi, my name is Daniel. So I'm going to present about types of muscles. So there are three types of muscle tissue. The first is cardiac muscles. The second one is smooth muscles, and the third one is skeletal muscles. So cardiac muscles cells are located in the walls of the heart, a pair sheeted, and also under voluntary controls. So next we have smooth muscle fibers. So they are located in walls of hollow in visceral organs except the heart. They also appear in spiral shapes and are also under involuntary controls. Next, skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscle fiber occur in muscles which are attached to the skeleton. So they are striated in appearance and also under voluntary controls. Next is about basic properties of muscle tissues. In this slide, we have four of them. First is contractility. The second is excitability. Third is extensibility, and fourth is elasticity. So the first one is contractility. Is the ability of muscle cells to forcefully shorten. So in order to flex, the elbow need to contract the bicep brachii and other elbow flexors muscles in the anterior arm. We notice that in order to extend the elbow, the posterior arm extensor muscle need to contract. So muscle can only pull and never be pushed. So the next one is excitability. Excitability is the ability to respond to a stimulus which may be delivered from a motor neuron or a hormone. The third is extensibility. Extensibility is the ability of muscles to stretch. Let's consider our elbow is flexing motion. In order to be able the elbow flex, the elbow need to extensor muscle must attend in order to allow flexion to occur. So lack of extensibility is known as spasticity. So the last one is elasticity. Elasticity is the ability to recoil or bounce back to the muscle's original length after being stretched. Okay, next part is the importance of muscle functions. So the number one is to produce the movement. The second one is stabilize joints. The third one is to maintain the posture. And lastly, it needs to generate the heat.
So next, we go to the skeletal muscle. So here's the gross anatomy of skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle tissue is composed of individual cells called muscle fibers. Muscle fibers, which cells, are protected and strengthened by connective tissue covering or sheaths. First, endomysium. Second, perimysium and vesicles, and thirdly, epimysium. Vesicles are groups of fibers, and muscle are group of vesicles. Fascia is a sheet of fibrous tissue enclosing of muscle or group of muscle. A sheet of connective tissue called endomysium surrounds each muscle fiber, perimysium surrounds each vesicle, and epimysium encases muscles. Muscles are supplied with blood by arteries and nerves, which motor neurons. So this is the structure of a skeletal muscle. So next we go to the connective tissue coverings. Each muscle fiber of the skeletal muscle is wrapped in a thin delicate two-sheet layer of connective tissue called endomysium. Many muscle fibers are bundled together into groups called fascicles. Each fascicle is wrapped in a second layer of connective tissue made of collagen called perimysium. Many fascicles are bundled together to form a skeletal muscle. Each skeletal muscle is covered by a third layer of dense fibrous connective tissue called epimysium. Each skeletal muscle is then covered by a fourth very tough fibrous layer of connective tissue called deep fascia. The deep fascia mainly extend past the length of the muscle and attach the muscle to a bone, cartilage, or muscle. So next, we go to the microscopic anatomy of skeletal muscle fiber. Myofibers are contractile elements that occupy most of the cell volume. Their banded appearance results from a regular articulation duct, which is A and light I bands. Myofibers are chains of sarcomere. Each sarcomere contains tape, which is myosin, and thin, which actin, myofilaments arranged in a regular array. The heads of myosin molecules form cross bridges that interact with the thin filaments. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, which we call it as SR, is a system of membranous tubules surrounding each myofiber. Its function is to release and then sequester calcium ions. The tubules are invaginations of the sarcolemma that run between the terminal cisternae of the SR. They allow the electrical stimulus to be delivered quickly to deep cell regions. Skeletal muscle fibers. A muscle fiber is a long thin cell. Each muscle fiber is composed of myofibers. Each myofibril is composed of two protein filaments. Thick filaments are primarily composed of the protein myosin. They have a rod-like tail that terminates in two heads or cross bridges. These cross bridges interact with active sites on thin filaments. Thin filaments, which are primarily composed of the protein actin, they are coiled helical structures that resemble twist strands of pearls. Tropomyosin is the rod-shaped protein spiraling around the backbone of actin to stabilize it. Troponin is a complex of polypeptides. One binds to actin, one that binds to tropomyosin, and one that binds to calcium ions. Sarcoplasm reticulum, which is SR, it is a network of membranous channels that surrounds each myofibrous and runs parallel to it. It is the same as endoplasmic reticulums in other cells. Sarcoplasmic reticulum has a high concentration of calcium ions compared to the sarcoplasm, which is maintained by active transport calcium pump. When stimulated by muscle impulse, membranes become more permeable to calcium ions and calcium diffuses out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the sarcoplasm. Transverse tubules, as T-tubules, there are a set of membranous channels that extend into the sarcoplasm as invaginations, continuous with muscle cell membrane, the sarcolemma. Transverse tubules are filled with extracellular fluid and extend deep into the cell. Each T-tubules runs between two enlarged portions of sarcoplasmic reticulum SR, called cisternae. These structures form a triad near the region where actin and myosin overlap. Sarcoplasmic reticulum and transverse tubules, T-tubules, are involved in activating the muscle contraction mechanism because one transverse tubule is associated with two sarcoplasmic reticulum. They are termed as the triad. Here's the sliding filament model of contraction. Thin filaments are pulled toward the sarcomere centers by cross bridge, which myosin head activity of the thick filaments. So next we go to the physiology of skeletal muscle fiber. First, regulation of skeletal muscle cell or fiber contraction involves first, generation and transmission of an action potential electrical current along the sarcolemma. Second, excitation, contraction, coupling. Next, skeletal muscle cells are stimulated by motor neurons. The axon of each motor neuron divides profusely as it enters the muscle. Each axonal ending forms a branching neuromuscular junction with a single muscle fiber. An in-plate potential is set up when neuron transmitter acetylcholine (ACH) released by a nerve ending binds to ACH receptors on the sarcolemma, causing changes in membrane permeability that allow ion flows that depolarize the membrane at the motor end plate. In excitation contraction coupling, the action potential is propagated down the T tubules, causing calcium to be released from the SR into the cell interior. Sliding of the filaments is triggered by rise in intracellular calcium ion level. Troponin binding of calcium moves to tropomyosin away from myosin binding sites on actin, allowing cross bridge. Myosin active has a split ATP which energizes the working strokes and is necessary for bridge detachment. Cross bridge activity ends when calcium is pumped back into the SR. Contraction of a skeletal muscle. A motor unit is one motor neuron and all the muscle cells it innervates. The neuron's axon has several branches, each of which forms a neuromuscular junction with one muscle cell. The response of a motor unit to a single action potential of its motor neuron is called a muscle twitch. Isotonic contractions occur when the muscle shortens concentric contraction or lengthens eccentric contraction as the load is moved. Isometric contractions occur when muscle tension produces, but the muscle does not shorten or lengthen. So, that's all from me.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Zulaikha binti Al-Zahar and my matrix number is 0202 854808. And for this topic, I will explain about action and interaction of skeletal muscle in the body. So, what is skeletal muscle? Skeletal muscle are arranged in opposite group across body joints so that one group can reverse or modify the action of the other. For action and interaction of skeletal muscle in the body have divided into two parts. It is classification of muscle and attachment of muscle. So, for classification of muscle, they have four parts. It is agonist, antagonist, synergist, and lastly is protector. So, what is agonist? Agonist is the movement that provides the major force to complete the movement. Because of this, agonists are known as a prime movement. For example, in the bicep curl, which produce flexion at the elbow, and the bicep muscle is the agonist. So next is antagonist. Antagonist is a movement referred to the muscle that oppose to agonist. For example, during the elbow flexion, where the bicep is the agonist, the tricep muscle is the antagonist. While the agonist contract, causing the movement to occur, the antagonist is typically relaxed so as not to dependent to the agonist, and the antagonists do not always relax though. Another function of antagonist muscle can be to slow down or stop the movement. Okay, for the next part, for classification of the muscle, it is synergy. What is synergy? Synergy is a movement in the muscle that stabilizes the joint around which movement is encouraged, which in turn helps the agonist function effectively. And synergist muscle also help to create the movement, Example like in the bicep curl, the synergy muscle are the brachioradialis and brachial, which assist the bicep to break the movement and stabilize the elbow joint. Lastly is physator. Physator in a movement is the muscle that stabilizes the origin of the agonist and the joint that the organs bend or move over in order to help the agonist function most effectively. For example, in the bicep curl, there will be the rotator cuff muscle that they call the quadrant of the shoulder joint. And majority of physiators are found working around the hip and the shoulder joint. Okay, for the next part, for action and interaction of muscle in body, it is attachment of muscle. Attachment of muscle are divided into two. It is origin and interflexion. Okay, in most cases, one end of the muscle is fixed in a rest position, while the other end moves during contraction. The origin is the attachment site that do not move during contraction, while the inflection in the attachment site that does move when the muscle contracts. And the insertion is usually distal or further away, while the organ is proximal or close to the body. Relative to the insertion, for example, one could say the wrist is distal to the elbow. Conversely, you can say the elbow is proximal to the wrist. Okay, let's note this before I ending my presentation. I will explain about major skeletal muscle in the body. So, from anterior view, they have 40 superficial muscle are divided into 10 regional area of the body. It are facial, shoulder, arm, forearm, pelvic, thigh, leg, neck, thorax, and last but not least is abdomen. And meanwhile, from posterior view, they have 27 superficial muscles are divided into 7 regional area of the body. It is neck, shoulder, hip, thigh, leg, arm, and last but not least forearm. So that's all for my groups. Thank you.